Hi, people. This is Andy of Andy's Personal Development. We are currently live in the breakout room. It's one of those days where you have some technical hiccups that happen from time to time. So, if you're in our live audience, we apologize for beginning this episode late. But our guest has been very accommodating and tremendously patient. So, we applaud him for that. Maybe that's an indication of the type of content and the value of the information that he's going to be sharing with us soon. So, without further ado, I want to introduce our guest. As you can see, today's episode is entitled Redefining Your Servant Leadership with Jon Kidwell. And we're going to look at that from a very holistic point of view with regards to so many different areas of life that we need that kind of leadership. So, our guest, his name is Jon Kidwell. He's a leadership coach and consultant, and his information says author of soon to be released new book, Redefining Your Servant Leadership, where you are challenged to amplify your integrity, influence, and impact. So, without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Jon Kidwell, to the breakout room. Hi, Jon.
Hey, Andy, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the hospitality. And what y'all might not know is that he's pumping the tunes. So I'm just like back here dancing, waiting to get going. So thank you for this, Andy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jon. We appreciate your commitment and your level of professionalism. That's really, really appreciated. Thank you so much just for being with us.
Yes,
So,
sir.
I'm going to give you the opportunity to let our people know who Jon Kidwell is. What is your brand? Who do you represent that you want the world to really know and get the message of what you are projecting out there as an individual?
Yeah. Thank you, Andy. So I don't know that I represent them. I hope that I can be of service to them. But for me and for my leadership development company, we specifically serve mission-driven leaders. So we talk with and we work with those individuals, those organizations that are doing meaningful work for more than just the bottom line. The bottom line is important, yeah, and it's a part of it, but it's also about why we do what we do, how we do what we do, and trying to add value and service to the people that we do our work for, that we serve. And so those are the individuals that I work with, that we work for, those people, those organizations, to try to help them be able to lead at their best. Because when the leader is at their best, all of the rest seems to go much better. And so we want to help them do that so that they can lead well, so the people there can be well, and so that they can get good results.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing, Jon. So, I'm not going to second guess, but I want to believe that you have really found and defined your passion in life. Some people say it's your calling, some people say it's your fulfillment. We can choose different words to describe it. But for you personally, how did you find your place in the field of consultant coaching with the particular genre of dealing with servant leadership? How did that happen for you?
Yeah, a lot of pain and trial and error,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
here, let me go deeper into that
Right.
and just
Right.
share, right? Because I would tell you today that I really try to focus on three things: leading, teaching, and hopefully being generous, and doing it with a generous spirit and in a generous way. And it took a tremendous amount of time to be able to whittle it down, to try to approach things with a servant heart and a business mind for something bigger than myself.
Right.
So if we go back, like I would have told you, Andy, I would have told anybody that in third grade, I was going to be a teacher. Mrs.
Okay.
McCain was my teacher. She was wonderful. And I knew I wanted to be a teacher like Mrs. McCain. But then I also had a great grandfather who was a principal. I had a grandfather who was a principal. I had an uncle who was a principal. My mom taught special ed for 30 years, and then she was a school administrator. Like, this was supposed to be what I was supposed to do too, was be a teacher and then go on to be a principal. And I started there. And I really got to teach at an elementary school and high school. I was coaching sports. I was doing all those things. I went through my principal internship. I was on the path to be a principal, and I was absolutely blindsided. I pulled over to the side of the road one day. I'm on the phone with my wife saying, it was a culmination of like 6 months of emotion and figuring it out and wrestling with it. And I said, I'm not supposed to be doing this anymore. I'm supposed to do something different.
Yeah.
And like looking back, I saw, yeah, you started reading business books. You started trying to go to business conferences. You weren't feeling as fulfilled in the new things that were coming with school. You still love
Mm-hmm.
the teaching part, but some
Mm-hmm.
of those other pieces, they weren't a place where me, thought I could do something and
Right.
make a difference. And so I have wonderful, wonderful wife, and she says, "Okay, we'll figure it out."
Right.
And so I finish out the school year, and I switch over into working in a very large, locally based but global not for profit organization. And so for me, this is like, oh, I get to focus on being of service to others. I get to focus on something that's wildly important, helping strengthen people, families, community. This is wonderful. And we had a very strong business component to it. We did the fundraising, but we also had services that we provided that people paid for. And so I'm sitting here thinking, I get to lean into this leadership stuff. I get to lean into this business stuff, and I get to do it for something that is more than just me, right? And the bottom line, and it was awesome. I absolutely, absolutely loved it. And so this was where I started leaning into more of that leadership and that business side of those pieces. And by grace and good fortune and a lot of hard work and opportunities, uh, I was able to get promoted 7 times in 6 years, which was crazy. It was
Yeah. Yeah.
remarkable. It was fun,
Yeah.
and it was challenging. It was all of those things. And so I went from being a local kind of program manager to vice president of innovation and operations, and was leading about 1,100 people and had about a fifth of our business. And it was a wild, wild, wild fun ride. And then I got laid off.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so that one was about as abrupt and hit me about as hard as getting pulled over on the side of the highway and thinking, I can't do this anymore. But
Yeah.
that one was a lot longer of a process. I spent about 6 months working through business ideas, applying for different jobs, redoing the backyard because I needed something to do, right? I was
Yeah. Yeah.
feeling like I needed meaning, I needed purpose, I needed to be active because I couldn't just sit here and think about this all the time. I had to do something. And I just kept coming back into this idea of leading and teaching and helping others do that. And not because I figured it out and I'm perfect at it. I think that uh, I approach it imperfectly and very practically.
Mm-hmm.
That we want to advance the mission, that we want to make sure that people are well, and that we want to deliver results. And I wanted to help leaders do that. And so back to the car, I'm sitting
Uh-huh.
there having coffee with my wife, and she says, after 6 months of patience and me figuring it out, and us figuring out what this new way of work and life is going to look like, she says, "What do you
Mm-hmm.
want to do?" And I said, "I want to help leaders be better leaders." And she said,
Okay.
"That's the thing. That's
Okay.
something. We can work with that." And so then we got about working with that. And that is what was the genesis, kind of the creation of Leadwell and our leadership development company. And it was a long story to basically say I had to figure out that sweet spot by going through a lot of experiences where I figured out in each of those what might my sweet spot be and where my strengths could contribute, where I was really passionate about the work, where I could lose myself in service to other people doing something that's way bigger than any of us. The more I leaned into that and the more I kind of fine tuned it, the more we got to where we're at with Leadwell today, trying to help those mission driven leaders advance their purpose, their people, and their performance.
Wow. That is truly wonderful, John. Thank you so much for sharing. That is truly amazing. My concern is, and I am a leader myself in several
Mm-hmm.
ways. My concern is, how do we get people to understand that leadership, basically from that servanthood perspective, is critical, is the key, in my humble opinion, to creating the kind of environment where everybody feels the value that they have as being part of a team that produces a product or a service that's going to make a difference to people in the world. How do we get leaders to have that mind shift, to
Mm.
understand that they are not a boss per se, a dictator or a ruler, but rather a servant even to the people that are part of their team, and integrate that in the process so that you have people who would go out there and emulate that kind of leadership, even in their different areas, as insignificant as it may seem. What's the
Yeah.
greatest challenge, John, to get that mindset change for people to understand I'm a leader, yes, but
Yeah.
first of all, I'm a servant?
Yeah. So that's a big question, Andy, and I can't pretend that I have the answer to change people's mind, nor do I think that I can change people's mind. But I do think that they can change their mind, and I
Okay.
think that perhaps some of the things that we are battling is you and I, everybody that is a leader that at some point contributed or they built something, they've worked really hard. That is
Mm-hmm.
100% true.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're moving into a different place where sometimes there's the like look back and be like, no, you need to do this hard work, and I've done mine, so now I get to rest. That could be a place that a leader comes from. uh, Sometimes it could be, this is my money, I'm in charge, I get to make the rules, right? And that could be a
Uh-huh.
place that a leader comes from. For me, what I've realized is, um, when I'm not doing well, I'm usually really focused on me, my
Ah,
ego, my
ah.
pride, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And and I think that that is the thing that is usually at the crux of it.
Okay.
And so some of the things that I like to do, and I'm grateful that I've been able to make mistakes and still keep going,
Yeah.
because I've made a ton of them. But one of the things that I figured out that has helped me figure out about placing service as such a priority is when I look and see all of the things that are happening that are better than I would have done them, that are improvements on what I've done, and that people are doing to help me. That place of humility, saying, "Oh my goodness, like this really wasn't all done by me. I'm really contributing only very much into my sweet spot, the thing that maybe only I can do." And when I look around and see all of the contribution of others, I can approach that with a humility that says, well, if you're doing this for me, I want to do things for you. I want to serve you. Uh, the other piece is also a heart of gratitude. I
Ah,
think looking and seeing all of what everybody's doing and being able to say, this is much bigger of a contribution than I could do myself, kind of that humble approach, and then being grateful for it. I think those two things have a tremendous power to kind of whittle away the pride and the ego, by looking at things with that perspective and with being grateful for the contributions of others.
yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
think we have, for quite a long time, found a true dynamic in understanding the power of being grateful. But many a times, because of false pride, I wouldn't say pride, we tend to kind of shove it aside.
Yeah.
But then you said something about why, the big why. And I
Yeah.
want to help us to understand that. So I'm just,
One, in rehiring your best self, own the past. Step two, communicate that you are practicing. Every single one of us has been frustrated and completely caught off guard by somebody that walks in, sets up an entirely new meeting agenda, starts giving feedback when they've never given feedback before in their life, or rolls out a new strategy and pretends like it's the thing that we've always done. Every single one of us gets frustrated, caught off guard, and we look and we just think, are you that unaware or disconnected from reality that none of us realize that you just changed and you're playing like, no, guys, this is the way that we've always done it? Instead of showing up and just pretending that this is the way that it's always done it because you've already owned the past, now communicate that you are practicing. What might that sound like? It might sound like, I've learned this new thing. And I would really love it if you all would help me grow and get better at this new trait, at this new skill, at this new style.
so, okay, you know what? Let me just let you expound because I have so many things going around in my mind. But
Yeah.
you are the man behind those words. Where is
Yes.
it coming from exactly?
It's coming from a place of sitting in meetings with people or in rooms with people and not wanting to make a positive change, something that I know is going to be good for everybody there, that is honestly going to free me from this frustration, and not wanting to do it because I'm afraid, because I think they're going to look at me like I'm crazy, and um, and I have seen Patrick Lencioni just model this so ridiculously well, and so easy and simple, and just tell people what you're doing. Be able
Wow.
to say, just tell people what you're doing, right? And say things like, "Hey, I realized the way that we were doing meetings probably wasn't really wonderful for you all, and frankly, they weren't super effective. So I found this new thing. I read this new book. I listened to this podcast with Andy, and now I'd like to try this out. Come along with me." Instead of going in there and being like, because I've done this. I'm guessing that a whole lot of us have done this, right? Like, we're going to do meetings this way because they're the best thing ever, and I found this thing, and we're going to, and like, just kind of get on the level and focus on being people and friends first, and then you bring in that heart of, hey, I'm doing this because I'm trying to get better myself, or I'm trying to make our team better, and communicating what you're doing, just saying what you're doing, really brings down the stakes, the uh, the emotions of it, and it's just, hey, we're doing this not because every meeting I had in the past was exactly the best thing ever, and not because we're going to do this thing right, or because now I'm trying to give specific corrective feedback and I've never really done that before. Just say, I'm trying a new style. I'm trying to do this to be helpful to you, to be helpful to the team. Let me know where I really don't get it right. So let me give you an example for me, right?
Sure, sure.
Some of that conflict, those crucial conversations, delivering hard feedback, that was something that I really had to practice through, and I still have to make sure I'm paying attention to it. Otherwise, I'll kind of slide away, and I don't want to do it. I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. I don't want to make people unhappy. But I also know it's needed for us to do the best work we can. And so in my head, I was thinking, as soon as I say something like, Andy, thank you so much for that work, it's not good enough. What can you do to make it better? That they'd be like, you're a jerk, right? Just absolutely. They'd be looking at me and saying, you're a jerk. And so I was telling folks, hey, I'm focusing on how to kind of engage in some of these tough conversations and give him feedback. And I would really love it if you would help me make sure that I'm doing it in a kind way and in an honest way. I don't want to be a jerk, but I do want to be honest, and I do want it to be helpful. So as I'm going through this, can you help me with how I'm doing while I'm telling you kind of how you're doing? And I get that's really circular, but but people were like, yeah, absolutely, because one, they want to help you, and two, they actually want you to do it with a kind, honest approach as well, right? They don't want you to be a jerk about it. And so I had to figure out, help me do the thing that I'm trying to do and avoid what I'm trying to avoid, so that it can be good for both of us. And they're like, yeah, absolutely, we'll do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I am a member of coaching.com.
Hmm.
I've got my own platform there as a life and development coach. And one of the things that I've learned over the time that I've been with them is that there are several areas of intelligence that many of us are not aware of. One of those is humility intelligence.
Hmm.
And when I heard the term the first time, I was taken aback because it definitely was something new to me. But then when they began to explain what humility intelligence meant, and what it simply meant was that you were going to look at it from a neuroscience perspective where you're thinking to yourself, if the situation, the circumstances, the conditions requires for me to be humble, I must have enough situational awareness. and the intelligence to recognize, even as the leader, I need to be humble. And that blew me away because in terms of tradition, in terms of culture, we basically grew up where the leader is this macho individual that does not display vulnerability, does not show emotions, does not even show weakness. And what we have come to recognize is that that's a false sense of being human. When you leave that human aspect out, where you can't display your true emotions, even in a place where it may not be required, then it says that you're being something else beside human. Therefore, how can you be empathetic to those who are around you, who are not robots, mind you? They are not products. They are not machines that come off an assembly line. They are people. And so the importance of this, and I'm not trying to steal your thunder, John, is that at the end of the day, humility with gratitude
Mm.
makes a heap of a difference. I say all this to say I totally understand your concept, where you're coming
Mm.
from, and the personal experiences you've had. And I applaud you for being able to say it in such a passionate manner that I know is going to resonate with many. So let me just switch things a little bit. I want to go to the book.
Yes, sir.
And I want to ask you, John, how did you come up with the name, the title of the book? What led you to use that as the title?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, it's really because it's the process that I lived for 10 years,
Uh,
kind of redefining myself as a servant leader. And
uh-huh.
so here's kind of what I felt, and here's what I was experiencing, and it was that people had ideas about how I was supposed to be, and those ideas influenced how I thought I had to be as a
Hmm.
servant leader. And a lot of those are kind of the cultural narrative that spins around servant leadership. And frankly, a bunch of them are myths. They're misconceptions. I had this idea, right, that you couldn't really be good at business if you were a servant leader, and that others just kind of look at you with a, oh, like, bless your heart, kind of pat on your head, like, we'll go over here and do the real business while you're over here focusing on the people. And that's a myth. That is not at all how servant leadership actually shows up. And there were others that if you're a servant leader, you have to be nice. Like, without fail, if you are not nice to people, you're not a servant leader. That if you say no, well, people are going to say, oh, you either don't care about me or you don't care about the work. That it was this idea that you always had to say yes. And so I had a bunch of those that had begun to inform how I was leading. And it really came to a culmination when my leader pulled me aside. Like I said earlier, this the same experience is really what sent me down this 10-year journey. And he just said, hey, we know you are an honest person, that you operate with integrity. But but when you don't show up in these meetings, when you don't engage in conflict, when you don't disagree with the rest of the team, we think you're hiding stuff and we don't think you're being honest. And that challenge of my integrity had me wondering, well, like, if I'm not getting it right, what am I supposed to do and how am I supposed to be? So I did what most semi research averse individuals did, and I Googled leadership, right? And I found out that we define it so much on command,
Yeah.
on control, and on positions.
Ah,
And that's how we define leadership. And then you and I, you just did it. You did, right? And every single one of us thinks, what are some of the things that bother us most about leaders? And it's
hmm.
leaders who are commanding, who are
Yeah.
controlling, and
Yeah.
who only care about the position. And I was like, well, no wonder we're getting this. This is how we define it. It's influencing how we're doing these things.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, well, what does it say about servant leadership? Right? Google that. What do I find? I don't find anything.
Whoa.
Closest thing that I found was a servant leader is one who serves.
Ooh.
Okay. Well, what
Okay.
does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, what does that
Exactly.
mean? Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So then I found the Greenleaf philosophy, right? It doesn't say it's a definition. It says it's a philosophy that it's a leader who, in service to people to help them grow, the community grow, that they serve the places with which they belong, right? And I was like, that's a great idea and concept. And I needed something that was much more tangible, that was semi-informative, and that was practical. And so that I just work through. What do I do? I read Lencioni, I read Maxwell, I went to the Bible, I went to McKinsey. Like, what do all these people say is leadership? And at the end of the day, I landed on servant leadership. And frankly, I think leadership in general, but servant leadership is the act of influencing the attitude, thoughts, and behaviors of others toward a shared purpose. We're all trying to get there. I can't influence you if we're not going in the same direction. So when we have that shared purpose and we're focusing on, how do I influence? How do I serve? How do I speak? How do I lead by example? How do I earn your trust so that I can, in fact, influence how you think, how you show up, and what you do, so that we can make this thing achieve, so that all of us can grow and thrive? That to me was something that I could land on as more helpful and kind of build off of, to go forward and try to lead and serve people as I had hoped to. And hopefully it's helpful for other people as they go do the same.
Yeah. Wonderful. That's deep. That's really deep, my friend.
Hmm.
So, what's the current situation with the book? Has it been actually released as yet?
It is. We released it January 17th, and so we are nearly
Wow.
a month into it. I
Uh-huh.
know. Look at this. Not a great mug. The guy could look better, but the book looks great.
Come
The
on.
team
Come on, John. Come on.
the team
You're
did a great
I was
job
gonna
putting it
ask you
together.
about that. I was gonna ask you about that. Here it is.
Yeah.
I put it up just now. I know you saw it.
Yeah.
That smile is outrageous. It's not an adult smile. It's like an adolescent smile. It's like you're
Yeah.
saying, "Hey guys, finally we did it."
Yeah.
And to me, that sends a powerful message.
Mhm.
It tells me how valuable this is to you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I see it. So I don't know.
Thank
But
you.
at the end of the day, it does make a statement that is so much more innocent and
Mhm.
refreshing than so many others I've seen. So it's since the 17th of January it has been
Yes,
out.
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep. We're coming up
What's
on a month.
what's the feedback so far, John?
Oh man, well, overwhelming
Hmm.
is one word that I can use for the feedback so far.
Okay.
But the there are a couple pieces that have really impacted me.
Hmm.
Um, Early on, I got a message from somebody, and their line was, "This is the book on leadership I didn't even know I needed."
Wow. Yeah.
And that one was just like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
hit, and I felt it because that's what I felt 10 years ago when I didn't know what I needed, and I was trying to figure it out and piece all these resources together. Um, there was another one that came that said, "I've been challenged to step up in my leadership," and I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't know why I was going to do it. And I didn't know how to do it for me. And this book helped me guide into what I should think about and how I could do it as a leader. And so that one was like, again,
Yeah.
because it's taking what you said is like, oh, that's a really deep idea, and trying to make it extremely practical and
Wow.
how I show up as a mission driven, servant hearted, business minded servant leader. And so those were some of the great ones. The one that honestly was like the most fun one was somebody on Amazon put out there, and he said, I went and I took leadership in college, and we had a humanetics book, and it was very academic and dry. And this book is not like that. This book was actually helpful.
Uh,
I was like, that just warms my heart. That's so fun. I feel
yeah.
bad for that other book. I don't know who it is. You know, I'm sure I know it has a tremendous amount of value, but that person's comment, I was just laughing and was like, I hope so, because if it is not practical, if it's not something that is reality tested, like I have made the mistakes, and they're just in this book with hopefully a path for people to do better, then we're missing the point. So those were some really fun ones and some really impactful ones for me.
Thank you for sharing, John. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I want to share something that struck me. It moved me when I read it,
Mm.
and but I need your permission to read it. It's part of the publication. Is that okay if
You,
I read it?
yes, sir. Please, you have my
Okay.
permission, Andy. Thank you for
All
that. It's
right.
such an
Uh,
honor.
Here we go. This one is entitled "Out with the Old, In with What's True," and that's even new to me. In the middle of a hamstring stretch for my left leg, Megan asks me, "When was the last time you replaced your shoes?" My shoes? My shoes are great. I tell her very clearly it is not the shoes, it is that I am getting older. She's not convinced. She goes on to tell me, "You should replace your shoes every 400 miles or so, and you're probably 4,000 miles past that." Okay, that might be true for other people, but I like my shoes. They are comfortable, and I'm just getting old. She was so sure that this was the solution that she bought me new shoes. Reluctantly, I switched over to the new shoes. I ran for 3 days in those new shoes, and then my leg pain was gone. It was 100% gone. When I switched shoes, I also dropped all the extras, the extra water, warm up, stretching. And after the first day of 2 ibuprofen as well, I had worn my shoes out. The real truth was I wore my shoes so far out that they went from being a good fit to a limiting factor on my running and overall health. I needed to replace my shoes to regain my ability to run and live well
Mhm.
for the long run. Wow. John, there's so much content in that simple piece of passage that I read there. What was eye opening for you and the lesson truly that you're driving in that? We want to hear it from you. You have the passion, I'm sure.
Yeah. That there were a couple of things. One, that routines are really helpful, but ruts usually take us in a place we don't want to go.
Yeah.
And I was in a rut, right? It was something obviously as you read, Andy, which man, that was so cool. Thank you for that gift of hearing that and just reminiscing on that. But back into routines are helpful, and ruts usually take us in a place we don't want to go. Um, I was in a rut. I was in a place where I was so stuck in this idea that I was just getting older, which I am, but
Yep.
that wasn't the reason my leg was hurting,
Mm-hmm.
and it was taking me places I didn't want to go. To starting this process of medicating, and also just being stuck, right? And so that was one. The other thing that really hit me inside of this is that there are things that I believe to be true that just aren't.
Hmm.
And if we go back to what we were talking about earlier and
Yeah.
some of that, like I believe that a servant leader had to be nice,
Mm-hmm.
that I had taken being nice so far that it was no longer, honestly, Andy, about being nice to you.
Mm-hmm.
I was, I'd come full circle on that, gotten into a rut where what is good was no longer true because I was now being nice just so that you would think well of me,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
because I was doing it that was in a good place for you.
Yeah. Wow.
And so when I say out with what's old, in with what's true, what I've discovered in looking at other people and how they do it, people that are truly kind, that are honest, even when it is hard,
Mm-hmm.
those those people tell the kind truth.
Yeah.
And while sometimes it might hurt, you can actually tell they're doing it because they want to help me. They want to help you.
Yeah.
And so I had to reorient on servant leaders. It's not that they have to be nice, but servant leaders do tell the kind truth.
Right.
They do
Right.
it in a way where it's going to benefit anybody, that it is in fact honest. And what it produces is usually people do like you, but more than that, they respect you. There's value, and there is this depth of relationship that is built on truth and trust. Um, and so that was one of kind of the examples that kind of bled out of me not replacing my shoes and then doing it again. And so here's the other really cool fun part is I just traded my shoes out last week again because they had hit the spot. It was time that those shoes had to go. And I wasn't yet in that place because I might be stubborn, but I do learn. And so I replaced my shoes earlier now, but I knew it was coming. The
Right.
soles were starting to come out.
Yeah.
It was just getting a little there, and it was like it was the very early stage, and it's like, oh, yep, my body's telling me we're about at 400, 500 miles. It's time to trade these out.
Yeah.
And guess what? Running feels great.
Right.
Still
Right.
going. Yeah.
Good. Good. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, John. We applaud you and we appreciate
Mm.
that. I learned several things from that, and personally for me, I think one of the best thing that came out of that is we cannot be slaves to habits,
Mhm.
but we must consider every aspect of our life as a lesson,
Yeah.
a moment in which we can see not just ourselves in it, but withdraw and see as an observer how it looks from so many different perspectives, and then choose the one that we think would help us to show up on our best
Hmm.
every day. And it just takes one moment of recognition to realize that. So thank you so much.
Uh,
I want to share
and
another video with us, John.
What does that mean, take risk? It means that I can be a little careless or a little carefree because I know that you care about me. I know that at the end of the day, you are for me. And so I get to be a little careless, a little carefree because you are not going to write me off if I accidentally say the wrong word, if I accidentally send the wrong email, if I accidentally cost us some money. It's a mistake. It's a non fatal mistake, meaning we can correct it. We want to move into that place where we can be a little risky. If we remove all risk, we will lose the innovation of our organizations. We will lose the integrity of our organizations. People will no longer bring problems and issues and mistakes. If they can't take a risk and have a failure, they will hide the failures.
Wow. Man, man, you've been digging. You've been digging, John.
I'm
Color
working, right?
do some color commentary on that, please.
this is this is so funny. It's like I feel like a quarterback in there watching my own game film, and then having to get in there and start talking about it. So where 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 that came from was really talking about setting up healthy and high performing culture,
Right, right.
and that inside of that, Google did Project Aristotle, and they found that that the number one factor was this idea around psychological safety.
Mm-hmm.
Amy Edmondson out of Harvard had contributed so much to this space, and it's it's this idea that I can take risks,
Mm-hmm.
and that you and I as people are still going to be okay.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so you've probably felt that. I've felt that in work settings where if every single time I forgot to dot an I, if every single time I forgot to cross a T, if in the pathway to serving 600 people, I made a mistake with 6, not even necessarily an ethical mistake, but just I flubbed it, right? I had a typo. I I was a little bit of a jerk. I didn't have the right language. Or if on the pathway to trying to build a $6 million business, I lost $600. Now, I need to be faithful in that. I need to steward those things well. It's an opportunity for me to learn, yes. But if I'm not in a place where we are relationally sound enough that I can come and say, Andy, I messed up. I thought this ad was going to work. I spent $600. I lost $600. Like it didn't work. Like, okay, what'd you learn?
Hmm.
Well, I learned A, B, C, D. Great. What are you going to do with the next $600? Well, I'm going to do this, 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 this. Oh, that sounds great. Let's see how that works. Let's go test that. If I can't ever bring those things, I'm going to hide those things.
Okay.
Or I'm never going to do those things, right? Hey, Andy just gave me $6,000 to go invest in marketing. Well, I'm just going to play it safe. I'm just going to do this thing over here that has low risk, low reward, because if I don't bring back any money, if I don't give Andy $6,000 back, he's going to really come at me.
Mm,
It's not going to be good. So I'll put it in a little, savings account, and I'll give him $6,001 back, when perhaps your expectation was use this $6,000 to go generate and serve people
yeah,
and advance us to be able to earn $60,000.
right.
We have to build the relationship, the community, the connection, so that we have that level of freedom to go and take risk and still come back together, and we're relationally okay. And as a result of the mistake, as a result of the success, we can debrief, we can learn, and we can make it better, even better. Whether it was a failure or an absolute, like, oh, this thing works, we can make either one of them better because we're going to learn in the process.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing. As you're speaking about the risk aspect and the analogy you drew with the $6,000 and someone like burying it
Yeah.
and giving me
Yeah.
back just $1 as a profit or rate or return of interest.
Yeah.
I remember a Roman senator in the early first century. He said, his name is Publius Tacitus.
Mm.
He said, the desire for safety stands against every noble and great enterprise.
Wow.
And it also reminds me of a scripture in the Bible where an individual gave three servants 10 talents, 5 talents, and 1 talent. The one that he gave 10 invested, the one that he gave 5 invested, the one that he gave 1, he buried it.
Mm-hmm.
So it tells me that we have the opportunity to understand that in the taking of risks, calculated or not, it is in that moment or in those moments that we find the true or the reality of what we can experience. Because imagine if the Wright brothers didn't try to fly.
100%.
Exactly. Or
We'd
if,
also be taking boats
right,
across the
there
ocean,
you
right?
go. There you go. Let's say Thomas Edison decide, okay, I've done this 950 times. I'm not going any further. What would have happened? We live in darkness, right?
That's right.
So I understand the concept, John, and I appreciate it so much. This has been a wonderfully amazing and informative episode.
Mm.
And we're coming to the end, and I just want to take some downtime, a moment. Did you support the 49ers or the Chiefs?
So I did not have a dog in the fight because I originally grew up in Michigan, and I was rooting for the
Oh,
Lions a couple of
okay,
weeks
okay.
ago.
I get you. I
And
get you.
but my nephew, in fact, loves the Chiefs, so we just said yes, wonderful. If the Chiefs win, that's great. And so for my nephew, and I suppose if we had to choose, we were choosing the Chiefs, but no dog in the fight. I was there for the commercials.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, in terms of AI, this will be my last question.
Yes, sir.
In terms of the use of AI, how do you value its ability to help us? Or is it something that we should be very cautious about in terms of its inability to sometimes allow us to be just creative, be human, and be real?
Mm. Thank you for the question.
Yeah.
And I I don't know what I don't know,
Mhm.
especially as it comes to AI.
Yeah.
And so I think that there are remarkably cool things that are happening and that are possible, and what it is bringing from all of the content and information that it can have. I think as long as we can use AI to further serve people and
Mhm.
that which is good and beneficial, and we use it as a tool and not a replacement for
Mhm.
people, right? A
Yeah.
tool to help people, not a replacement for people,
Right.
then it will be wonderful.
Okay.
But if it further divides us, if it diminishes our actual connection, right?
Mhm.
Like sitting down and having dinner with each other, then we've set it up for all of us to fail. So I hope that it helps helps each of us live better with each other, connect better with each other, and not replace people, but in fact enhance what we do with each other, because that relationship, that connectivity with other people is vital.
Yeah.
Uh, but the logistics and semantics, I don't know a whole lot, but I hope that we can use it in a way to drive more connection in relationship and not distance us even further than where we might be.
Wonderful. Appreciate that, John. So we've come to the end of this amazing episode, and I want to give you, John, the opportunity to tell people how they can make contact with you, how they can get the book, if they need you to speak, or your servant leadership experiences, and the different aspects of how you can help them to improve what they do as leaders. Let them know how they can effectively make contact with you.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you for that
Sure.
opportunity. The book, Redefine Your Servant Leadership, is out. If you go to redefineyourservantleadership.com, you can find all the different places that you can get the book. We also have a bunch of resources there, some downloadables to help guide you through the book as well. So redefineyourservantleadership.com. The website for myself and the company is Leadwell, Leadwell, leadwell.com. And we do training for mission driven organizations. We provide coaching and we create content. You can find me there, and you can find me on most social media platforms with the @Jon Kidwell or @Jon.Kidwell and at the Leadwell page. We would love to connect with y'all and to do just like Andy and I were doing, have a conversation, be able to serve each other, to contribute, to learn, and to help you all advance the mission, make sure your people are well, and get good results.
Hey, wonderful. Thank you for sharing, John. So, folks, remember the three watchwords. On the breakout room, we focus on health, happiness, and prosperity. We have had an amazing episode with Jon Kidwell. Check his book out. Wow, it's an amazing episode of things that he has experienced, as well as the different researches that he would have
Mhm.
done with regards to servant leadership. You need to check the book out. Trust me, it's going to give you something special that you may not have thought about before or seen, but it's a really amazing, amazing piece of literary. Please check it out. So
Mm.
until next time, this is Andy of Andy's Personal Development, together with our guest, Jon Kidwell, in the breakout room, saying, so long, guys. God bless. Remember, keep your story at the forefront. It is yours. It matters the most. Namaste. Shalom. Bye for now.
Mm.